Me and Mako need a go. They were catching me and do me crop of mission, baby. By the mention of his name, every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess. Yeah, Otawo no yani mishele. Benamenga mo begwendele. Amen nunyani amen pele. Mami fe agamin tele. Otawo no yani mishele. Benamenga mo begwendele. Amen nunyani amen pele. Mami fe agamin tele. Him lyrical, don't flow records. Hey, grab on the PTA. Hey, him lyrical, don't flow records. Hey, grab on the PTA.
You're listening to WGHC 98.3 FM.
While you, but we are nothing friend from here the first time. After trust and stand, come on, why you get anything you like. Long as you are right, and me are right. You know your man, that's why I'm
Your voice, your music.
Whether me in a skirt or jeans or short shorts, head raised when me walk past. Me feel the eyes, believe the eye, me love the lights. When we spy.
Baby pana, they say you like you all I get to all baby pana. Anywhere that you go, I can follow you to go.
I am Mazi KK Odeluga.
Mazi Ejikeme Obasi.
Na Mazi Oke Okachuku.
This is Straight Talk Radio, the world as we see.
Coming to you from WGHC 98.3 FM. Your voice, your music, your station.
Listen to us this and every Saturday at 4 to 5 p.m. U.S. Central, and this and every Tuesday at 9 to 10 p.m. U.S. Central.
Ndewolo.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Straight Talk Radio, coming to you from WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice, your music, your station. I am Mazi Oke Okachuku.
Mazi Ejike Obasi.
Mazi KK Odeluga.
Welcome and Ndi Wibem Dalonum. This afternoon we're going to continue some of the conversations you heard before, but we will slowly back into it. Today, our topic for today will be the massacre that's going on in Benue, the Benue Fulani herdsmen massacres. And but before we get there, we want to talk about some of the things in the news. So like we talked about before, on Saturdays, we do news from Africa and talk about things that are Africans. And on Tuesdays, when we come to you, we talk about the global world. So talking about Africa, if you watch CNN once in a while and you like the show GPS by Farid Zakaria, he talked about the Mo Ibrahim Award that has not been claimed for a while. It's a $5 million award to any leader in Africa that has actually been able to peacefully transfer power without struggle and made the life of a populace better than when they started. And that award had been unclaimed for a while, except that this week it was claimed by none other than the former Liberian president Ellen Johnson Sirleaf.
Yes.
So and I can't say anything much more than well deserved. But also on accepting the award now, she says she's going to put her efforts towards making the world better for women. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the first thing is to congratulate her.
Yes.
For most of us that live in the African continent, we know the travails of Liberia and Sierra Leone, because I look at them as the continuum of one big conflict.
Yes.
She transitioned, she brought stability, elections were held, and she transferred power peacefully. So far, it's, you know, understanding that it is going to take a lot to get Liberia to stand on her own 2 feet.
Yes.
Seeing how far behind they fell
devastating.
with the many years of mindless violence,
Yes.
I think she did a good job. She did a good job. Mazio Deluga.
Yeah, I agree with you. She did a good job of providing that buffer, you know, transition. And in fairness to most of our African leaders, she's been around. She's been involved in Liberian politics for a long time, and then have been the favorite for most Western countries.
Yes, it's the pick
And I
of the
think she
Westerners.
leveraged that, but you know, her legacy could be mixed in some ways in terms of the roles that she played. And my hope for Liberia is that Liberia will turn that corner and actually create an authentic national vision that will incorporate everyone within the Liberian space and help destroy that barrier, the American Liberian native Liberian divide.
Yeah.
Right.
And looking at the new president, their new president,
Where?
George.
I mean, his story is quite remarkable.
Yes.
True.
Yes.
He came in as a celebrity,
Yes.
and when his celebrity stardom or his fame couldn't carry him through,
Yes.
he went back and did the due
Due
diligence
diligence.
and grew up among his people, went back to school,
Yes.
got his first degree, then became a legislator, and then moved up to the presidency. And I hope he will be that man.
That's
one.
a man with a plan. So if he incorporates the same kind of attitude,
Long-term planning.
yes,
Yes, I mean, and there's a lot of hope
yes,
resting on him to actually
a lot of weight too. with
Weight,
that
yes,
hope. Yes.
and to bring Liberia together and to move her into the 21st century
To quote-
and move away from her long history of American dependence.
So to quote one of our Nigerian authors, it's surviving the peace now that is the problem.
Yes.
So another story is that is almost converse to that is in Madagascar. There's a lot of anti-government protests. The elections are coming for the legislative, and now there's protest in the street because the people are wary, just like most places in Africa. It's almost like the common news. But the thing that caught my eye is that the government is actually, the leaders are condemning the protest by the people and actually saying that it's equivalent to a coup. These are people who are sitting in power. People are protesting, you're not doing well, and they're condemning them that this is almost a coup. You know what comes after that?
Yes.
Now they're going to try to round up the coup plotters,
Yes,
and then we
yes.
get back into the same thing.
The agitators. Well, it is, I think the formula has been applied several times and has found to be successful.
The same old hymn book.
Unfortunately, in our part of the world, power does not belong to the people.
Unfortunately.
And once you get into power, you immediately feel it is your divine right to rule. Even when,
We call it born to rule in Nigeria.
well, even when you profess to be democratic, you are trying to hold an election. The electorate that are going to put you back in office if they like have decided that they don't have anything to do with you, rather than going back to see where you have wronged them and try to make things right.
You declare them
You declare them miscreants.
the enemy of the people, according to one president I know.
That is the typical African response.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to what needs to happen within the African context. That nations will have to decide how they want to be governed. And the people themselves have to literally engage those who are in public service so that to make sure that it is something that is culturally relevant. Because a lot of peoples in Africa have been governing themselves before a lot of their colonial experience that imposed systems that they're still struggling with. So a good number of African leaders still have a colonial mindset, meaning they are in charge and you shouldn't say anything.
They just replace the guys that
They
left.
just replace it.
That's
Yes,
right.
yes.
So there's no authentic governance,
Homeborn, yes,
governance
yes.
system
Yes.
that is productive and that serves the purposes for which governments have been organized and for which Africa had been organizing herself long before the 15th century exposure to the Europeans.
I was listening to an old NPR show on podcast, and it reminded me of something. So it was talking about what happened. I mean, the difference between people who are introverts and extroverts, and how the system now, or the public now, has turned into that. Before, it was virtuous to have somebody who has character but is not overbearing and extremely loud and extrovert and charismatic even. But as we had continued to grow as a society, that we've come to actually appreciate more the people who are loud and show exuberant and brandish their charisma all over the place. And how that is dangerous, especially with how we educate kids in school. Because what that has done is we design the schools, we design the play, at work, we actually reward people for being that way.
Yes.
And what that has done is stifle the other voice, the other part that balances it out. So instead of having people who are really introverts at work who actually have great ideas, they're kind of pushed out or pushed down or forced to become something that they're not in order to do work. Why am I telling all this story?
Okay.
Because what that's telling me, actually, part of the reason they gave is what happened is people before lived in communal settings, whether it was cities or, I mean, they knew who they were.
Yes, who they
living with.
interacted with.
So
yes.
somebody knew you, and you didn't have to be somebody else. You didn't have to make a whole lot of noise because people know you by your work and your virtue and who you are.
Yes.
Talking about, I mean, they talked about Abraham Lincoln being the perfect example of that he was an introvert, but because people knew him and knew his power and the way he got to power just based on his person. Today, he won't be able to do that because he will have to run the kind of campaign that is really, really outlandish and attacking the other person. And so, but the explanation, one of the explanations is because as we started building cities and getting people to move from rural places to the cities, now people are coming in contact with people they didn't know. Okay. So now you have to sell yourself. And the people that we saw that are doing well are people who have sold themselves very well and introduced themselves to the other people. So I think in saying that, I'm like, oh, maybe that's what happened when the Europeans or Portuguese, whoever came to Africa and got a piece of it, when they amalgamated some of these nations that knew who they were and knew what their systems were and were working within the system that worked for them for millennia, for thousands of years. Now we are given a new system and you're working with people you don't know who don't know you. So now you're trying to show off so that you're loud enough. You're Brent, and the British and also the people who took over after them are continuing to reward the people that make a whole lot of noise, which makes sense because if you look in the country, Nigeria, where we're going to jump into next, you will see that the people who are in power are noise makers. And from what I learned in school, empty vessels make the loudest noise. Sorry for that long.
Well, I beg to differ.
Okay.
I beg to differ.
Yes.
I think that what has changed is that society as a whole has dumbed down.
Yes.
Because if you look at ndị Igbo na-atụ ilu sị nwoke lụcha ọgụ nwaanyị enwere akụkọ.
Yes.
And what that really meant was that a man did not have to climb the Iroko tree to talk about his prowess.
Yes.
Hmm?
Yes.
It was sung for him.
You
It
it was a show me
deed.
stage. You
Yes,
did your work.
absolutely.
Yes.
So, and if you, again, even in the early days of politics, and I think politics has always been noisy and dirty in some way or the other, but it mattered that you would have a record to run on. So if you look at...
Or character to
well,
exhibit.
if you look at prior to the Civil War in Nigeria,
Yep.
M.I. Okpara
Had character.
did not have to sell himself to Ndibo.
He was a known quantity to Ndibo. But that's what it actually proves a little bit of my
Well,
point.
but
He had to sell himself to other people.
he needed to make alliances
Yes.
with other people.
Yes.
He did not necessarily need to,
And- oh.
but in selling himself, he had a record.
I want to correct that. He
Okay.
didn't have to sell himself to other people.
Yes.
He had to sell the Igbo agenda to other
other-
people. He didn't see that selling
Well,
his
okay.
person. Right.
And that's the point. Go to Western Nigeria, Yoruba and Awolowo.
Yes.
He could say to the Yoruba, to the Ndi Yoruba, this is what I have done for you. And Saduana had also a record that he could put to his people.
Yes.
Nowadays, who has a record? So I think what has changed is that the populace has moved away from holding people accountable for what they promised to do, and have, I think we have dumbed down our politics to such a level that we are now really doing, like you said, become very empty vessels. And that is not just the fault of the politicians, but also the fault of the electorate.
Yeah. But again, why is the electorate not engaged? It's also because of the quality of the public leaders. Because when you have public servants who are willing to talk about issues, who are willing to engage the electorate at the level where, at the point of their needs, then the people will pay attention. But so what they have done is to, through maladministration or poor governance,
Okay.
and lack of accountability, and no record upon which to run, then they resort to name calling and toggery, which is a lot easier if you have 10 vehicles in your campaign with everybody faces painted, with all kinds of brandishing all kinds of banners or clubs or weapons, shouting from around you. No decent person is going to come around. So, and I think the people should look at any any politician that comes to you with a lot of talks. You should worry about his integrity and also his character. They should assess how well people run campaigns to be able to tell you how they're going to govern. Because if it's a campaign that is full of violence, then you really don't have anybody. Sometimes he's going to be someone who will disenfranchise the population, the electorate.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I mean, there's a whole lot to discuss here about this, but I want to give the other piece of news that gets us to where we want to discuss. So the other piece of news is not too much news. It's not, you can't find it on CNN or 24 News or BBC. But it's news that I get mostly on my WhatsApp by people who know me or by groups that I'm part of. And it's about the Fulani herdsman massacre. We thought that, what happened the prior weeks and the 73 that were killed, and once in a while things we hear about farmers, and it's usually centered around communities of farmers communities and the so-called Fulani herdsmen. And then last week, I think on Tuesday, we talked to Ogebwe, who's a civil rights advocate and an attorney that had been in talks and in helping the people displaced by violence, Boko Haram, Bring Back Our Girls Chibok girls, and he is well versed in this because he actually is involved. But we talked to him about what the recent massacre that happened in Benue, and if you don't know the story, some armed terrorists got into a church that was in session and killed the pastor, two pastors on the altar, and killed a whole bunch of people and ransacked the church and burnt a few churches. People were injured, and just as the Nigerian government usually does, do you think they came to the rescue when the police and army? Nope, they came after. And what did they do after? Well, search the community and try to confiscate weapons after the people that did the deed are gone. The same thing we've been saying, that they are the perpetrators and they are collaborators, like T.Y. Danjuma said. That's exactly what happened. And of course, it took the Nigerian president how many days before I think after people started bombarding him on Twitter and everywhere, actually, if you look at that Twitter, he was responding. It says reply at M. Buhari or whatever. And then he said that, it's a satanic act for people to kill people in churches. And that's as much as he said.
No. You see, let's be clear.
Yes.
Thank God that people like the VP Osibanjo has woken up.
Yes.
Osibanjo.
Good morning, sir.
What has been going on since 1945 is a systematic persecution of Christians within the Nigerian geographic space, an ethnic cleansing, and continuation of a jihad. We've made this point in this program that the Sokoto Caliphate was created out of a jihadist movement.
From the footage.
And so you can't expect it all of a sudden to change. Let's be clear.
The world is moved on.
The Usman Danfodio led jihad, which is called the Fulani Wars or the Fulani TV War, took out all of the northern states, the Hausa states, and all the other minorities, the TVs and the Nupes and all those people who were there.
They conquered them.
They conquered and imposed
Sharia.
They imposed Islam.
A caliphate, right?
And imposed their sons as emirs. Now, so you don't expect anything to change at the core of that whole movement. It has not changed.
Yep. And
so when it was 66 and they came after the Igbo and the Easterners in the north, a lot of people felt, oh, no, this is all about the Igbos and their exuberance.
When they came for the Igbos.
So a lot of people felt, maybe you people are too noisy, you people are too proud, you people took over everything, you were controlling the economy. No, they wanted to rid the north
of foreigners.
Of Igbos. Christians.
Yes.
And that is the part of the protestation of Sir. Let me remove Sir. Afweke. Not Afweke. Akanu Ibem. Akanu Ibem rejected his
British
knighthood,
yeah.
on that basis, because he confronted Britain to say, you as a Christian state or predominantly Christian nation that brought Christianity to us is supporting the federal government of Nigeria, who are actually perpetuating a jihad. But everybody thought it was wartime rhetorics, that the Igbos were trying to make this a religious war. But thank God that VP Osibanjo now has come around to say it clearly. Yes, he called this that governance is spiritual warfare. We know that. If it's spiritual warfare, let them pray. Let us pray. Let's see whose prayer God will answer. But this one, it is real killing, blood and flesh.
Let me start by saying that
you were throwing out the gauntlet for the Elijah.
Before
challenge.
You go there,
Elijah challenge.
It was Joseph Stalin that said, "God is the God of mighty battalions."
Okay.
So the Nigerian space
Yes.
is, I know Dr. Mazio Deluga said this rhetorically.
Yes.
But I think the issue that one needs to look at here is, so we know history.
Yes.
We know how we got to where we are today. You can even theorize to say, I wonder what Nigeria would look like today if in 1966 Nigeria had been carved up into whatever number of countries, because people would not have run away. Your neighbors will remain your neighbors.
That's right.
But all that is now conjecture. The question is, today, where are we going? Osibanjo can come out and call a spade a spade. The bigger question is, what are you going to do about it?
As somebody,
You are the vice president of the
in the
Federal
executive
Republic of Nigeria,
the number 2 guy.
and people are being massacred. You cannot sit there and allow this to happen and come out and say, I was not the president.
Or tell me it's spiritual warfare, and that's all you said.
What are you going to do about it? Shall we first start by who sits at the National Security Council to talk about what's going on in Nigeria?
No, you see, when you talk about who sits, it goes back to this conversation that I don't care who sits there. We know the people who are killing people, citizens of Nigeria.
Okay.
They are not hidden. They are there with their cattle. So they already have visibility. So they are not an invisible force. They are not aliens,
Yes.
spirits that we cannot see. They are individuals who travel as a band with cattle, and they fling their AK-47 and all their weapons with them. And like the pastor said, the Reverend Father tweeted a few weeks before this happened,
Yes.
he was clear. We have been surrounded by Fulani headsmen, and we have no weapon to defend ourselves.
And that's the thing that is common in all these. People always get the news that there's a plan in action. That's an action plan that
There is something
to
about
unfold.
to happen.
And usually, it's not just the common man that knows this. The security agents know
No,
this
it
also.
Yes.
And usually, their action is they move away.
That's right. So,
And then they come in after.
so for the
To
VP,
prevent reprisals.
so for the VP, his work is cut out for him.
Yes.
We want to see him either resign his position
Now you're
or
talking. Now you're talking.
begin to speak clearly and loudly about this issue, not just within the Nigerian space, but internationally.
Actually, I listened to what he said, and I'm thinking either he or somebody watched our program, because at the end of it, what I said was a reference to Esther and Mordecai.
That's right.
And what did he quote? He
Esther.
talked about Esther and Mordecai and about how he's thinking, or how the message was, because he talked about people asking him to get out of the way or do something. And he said, well, remembering Esther, how Mordecai said, maybe you are in there for such a time as this.
No, he's there for such a time as this.
Well, he convicted himself by saying
Well,
that.
that's
because
the point.
He quoted that. Now do something.
Okay, and so let's go back to Esther and Mordecai.
Yes.
In basically what happened, those who know the story of the good book,
Yes.
Esther was a Jew who was steadily, unknowingly,
A beauty queen.
a beauty queen that became the queen.
Yes.
But now Haman had a plot to kill Jews all over Susa, right?
Yes.
In the whole Medo-Persian Empire.
Yes.
Now, when Mordecai confronted Esther to say, you are the queen,
Go talk to the king.
and this
Make
man
sure your
who
people
is
are not
the
slavic.
second in command to the king has already designated
He's
a
got a
specific
date.
date
To-
that all the
yeah,
Jews will be
Abiote Gallo,
killed.
he's
No,
prepared.
he's already prepared what to do, and he's going to hang Mordecai.
Yes.
Yes.
So, and the Jews were defenseless because they were prisoners of war. They were actually like captured, and they're as slaves, carried away
Yes.
in Susa. So, but what Esther did was to now ask the people to pray so that she can go
And
in,
declare fasting, right.
get favor with the king because she wasn't supposed to go in
You can't just
without
go in anyhow.
And what she was asking her husband to do was give the Jews the right and the authority to defend themselves, because the decree has already been signed by the king.
Yes.
He cannot reverse
Take it back.
Yeah.
But what he was asking was for the church to be, the Jews to be able to defend themselves. And that is why you have Yom Kippur.
Yes.
It was a day that the Jews, Yom Kippur,
Yom Kippur, yes.
the Jews were able to defend themselves. So if Osibanjo is going there, I will tell him.
He's quoting Esther.
No,
so therefore,
no, he should now be meeting with the churches, and he should establish to the Security Council of Nigeria, if you people cannot defend the Christians,
Not say if.
The
Since you people. Not if. Because
Since.
the if is presupposed. Since
yes,
you people can no longer defend
Christians in the north.
in
In anywhere in Nigeria, yes.
let the Christians now actually
Allow
arm
them to defend themselves.
And so, and that allowing them defend themselves is, there will be a bill in the House asking for state police
state security.
and state security
That's one way to do it.
over the that is controlled by the states, each state.
That's one way to do it, because a lot of places in the north, the governors in the north
Yeah.
and the people running the north are not Christians, and if they control the security, who is to say that the state security will protect those Christians? How they do it, I don't care. What you're saying, I agree with. I fully stamp on it. I have my signature here. I'll put my fingerprint on it. Since the security of the security apparatus of the nation is not working for Christians, let the Christians defend themselves. However you work that bill, however you word it, as long as he does this,
The other issue, of course, is so Osibanjo we see Miri.
yes.
By this conversation, we have already accepted that Buhari is part of the problem.
Oh yes.
So I will learn also. Osibanjo we see Miri,
Yes.
but trickling down.
Yes.
So right now, the massacres are occurring in Benue.
Happened in Ebonyi and
Might I remind you
Yes.
that a few years back, these were the exact same things that were happening in Jos
Yes.
Oh yes.
and surrounding areas among the Beron.
Yes.
It has now moved to Benue.
Down a little bit further.
If you cross the Benue
We're
River,
getting close to Asaba.
or Enugu.
Yes. Yes.
No, it has already struck at the end.
Yes, but let's call that
It
an
touched-
isolated
it touched and
incident.
went, yes.
But the point I'm trying to make is Governor Autumn
Yes.
is speaking out. I don't know what else he's doing, but at least he's speaking out. I have not heard a single Igbo governor come out.
Ugwuanyi cried, just like it was the shortest verse in the Bible.
Jesus wept.
Ugwuanyi wept. That's the most
that-
he did when it happened to him, and it was shorter than the verse in the Bible.
Mberede ka eji ama dike.
Oh, Fumberede ahụ
But
dị ike too.
agha akara aka.
Anaghị eri ngwọrọ, ụkpana okpoko bụ.
Why is the rest of Nigeria silent?
So actually, before we ask that question, I want to go back to just the metaphor you just dropped, which is Naga Karaka Anaghị eri ngwọrọ. So I'm taking it back to history. We had a representative from the I forgot the name of the council, the Christian council that made the movie The Disturbances here.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
yes.
And if
The
you
Baptist Center for Ethics.
yes, if you have not seen that movie, go to their website and
It is
watch
thedisturbances.com.
TheDisturbances.com.
and watch a few preview and actually buy the DVD and see the whole thing. One of the things that struck me watching that was the theme that I'm thinking. I mean, is it because we're in a new age, or was it because of then that the people, the foreigners who were foreigners to Nigeria, who had both Igbos and other ethnicity
Yes.
in their house,
Yes.
were going to the Igbos and going, I heard that there is this plan to exterminate you guys. I heard that there is something about to happen.
Yes.
And the common answer they got from the Igbo people was like, nah, it's not going to happen. Nah, it's just a rumor.
One day I'm kidding.
And it didn't matter how many times they went to them and say, hey, it sounds really serious. I think you guys should just, it's okay. I accept if you could just go home.
No, and the other thing, they commended the Igbos for their prayerfulness.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but now see, the man who read Psalm 91. And she felt that he knew his life was in danger.
But God was going to get up and do something you're not willing to do for yourself.
There is a pattern that has emerged in the last 60 years in Nigeria.
Or maybe that pattern has always been there.
The pattern, I mean, I would say from the 40s.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you know the interesting thing? I just found a
letter?
A document, newspaper cutting,
Yes.
1947 or so, where a group of Nigerians, including my dad, who were at Lincoln University,
Yes.
wrote talking about the Kano crisis
Uprising.
Okay.
in 1951.
Warning people there.
So this is as old as Nigeria. Yeah. The pattern is simple. And it was echoed by Sadwana, echoed by Osman Danfodio, echoed by Tafawa Balewa,
Yep.
who stated while the arguments were happening in the early 50s regarding independence of Nigeria from Britain, if the West should leave, if UK leaves, what Abadu Bello and Tafawa Balewa said clearly is that they will continue the jihad that their grandfather started.
I don't blame
And
them.
so the
You are
whole
normal.
the entire narrative, and this is not raising an alarm. Now we have seen this in rapid succession, but in the 70s,
continues to
in the
repeat.
70s, in the 80s, it was Igbo businesses being burnt. It was Igbo people being killed in the north. It was Maitasine. It was some kind of disturbance around communities, Kano, Jos, Bauchi, and isolated, and people called it maybe some kind of ethnocentric violence.
Riots.
In fact, like the Jos situation was called ethno-religious violence. Everybody's running away from the idea there is ethnic cleansing going on.
No, we want to be politically correct.
Well,
No.
That's
Because
what
what is happening is that the Fulanese use the same strategy.
it has worked. Why would you abandon something that works?
That's the point I was going to make.
Why
because
would you
somebody, I
Yes.
think somebody was the Chinese that said, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different
Outcome.
result is the definition of
Insanity,
madness.
yes.
Therefore, flip it on its head.
Yes.
If you do something and it works over and over again, why should you change?
The show Seinfeld, when it was the top show for NBC, so the show was about nothing according to them. And the question to Seinfeld is, why are you doing the same thing over and over? It's like, if it's working, why would you want to change
so,
it?
Unless the actors, the principal actors on the ground,
Yes.
change the situation, there is no drive for any of this to ever change.
And so, if I can say this, if any Nigerian thinks this is not coming to your neighborhood,
So I'll be a prophet again. And the prophecy is, this is the same thing has happened before and it's going to happen again unless.
And what that unless means, the people have to organize. Something we've always said in this program.
Yes.
Unless people organize. You see, I'm tired of our people going to the internet and reporting events and reporting stories of, oh, did you hear what happened?
After the fact.
Did you hear what
But
happened?
you knew it was going to
No,
happen
no,
before you
no.
told me it
No.
happened.
So now that the Catholic Church has spoken,
Yes.
because the Catholic Church is now asking for the resignation of the president,
Oh, yes.
which is extreme.
That's-
Because I realize
That's not extreme. That's not enough. I was calling for him
No, no.
to be arraigned at The Hague. So that's not enough.
extreme from that point
In
of
the-
view,
in
that
the-
in context of the fact that the Catholic Church had always
It's very conservative, and
They-
they would
they-
not
they-
like to yes.
when the church
They did that prayerfully.
when the church under Christian Association of Nigeria
Yes.
was turning the heat on Boko Haram,
Yes.
they pulled themselves out of can and weakened the Christian Association of Nigeria. Now, the our northern brothers have been facing staring death
Yes.
Yes.
in the face. Each time they went to church, they don't know whether they are going to heaven.
If you wanted to be a
Or they're
Christian
coming back to their
and
home.
understand
Yes.
persecution, if you wanted to be a Christian and understand persecution, you should be stationed in another.
So
another
my
part of
point
Nigeria.
is, a lot of the southern Christians were relax.
Yes.
It is something that we'll throw prayer to. And historically, Christian Association of Nigeria was governed by either somebody from the Catholic wing or from the Protestant wing.
Yep.
So Ayo Rijasefo was the first person who came out of the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria to actually run the organization. And I understand that his emerging as a leader was because of the support he got from the northern Christians who felt they needed somebody with some kind of toughness
Yes.
about addressing these issues of persecution that was going on and that was continuing with the destruction of churches within the north. Many Nigerians do not know that over 2,000 churches have been destroyed by the Boko Haram in the northeast.
Yep.
Not to talk of the ISIS. Now you have the Fulani headsmen. So from the time of the
It's three
post-election
heads of the same
violence,
snake. Yep.
remember who promised us mayhem after the election of Jonathan?
Oh, would it be PMB?
Okay.
All
so
right.
from that
Alex,
point,
I'll take PMB.
from
for,
that point,
who is PMB for 200?
from that point up until now, there have been a systematic purging of churches and destruction of churches. Why am I saying that? Why is this significant? When the British arrived and had interaction with the Northerners under the Sokoto Caliphate,
Yep.
there was an agreement
Yes.
that they should keep their system intact,
And they
that
did.
they will not allow missionaries to go up further north. So that's why you could see almost Jos was the dividing line.
Yep.
Southern
Caliphate.
Southern Kaduna,
Yes.
Zaria, those were the areas. Benue, the middle belt, was increasingly open season, open field. Now, a lot of the churches were built in the far north, were built by Nigerians who traveled to those locations.
Missionaries.
And so, when they get there, they are not allowed to live within
The traditional cities,
cities
the old
of the
cities.
people.
They have
So
to
they are
go.
given Sabongeri, which is segregational housing.
Right.
So right away, you people are being
You're
treated-
foreigners.
You are in an alien area where you're not supposed to come into a main city.
These are Israelis living in Goshen in Egypt.
That's right. So negotiation will be easy. But this is where you're living in Sabongeri, away from the people.
Very undeveloped, and you do
Two.
all the hard work.
You can only build your churches in your Sabongeri area.
Yep.
One of the things that Osibanjo now is supposed to be tasked by PMB to make sure that churches have the permission they need to build in the north. In some places. Oh,
What
all of a
happened?
sudden.
What happened?
No.
Something in their own country, they need different permission
Oh,
for the land that they own.
You see, what happens in the north is if Church A managed to get land,
Yes.
then all the churches will piggyback on that location. So that's why it's
All the
easy.
churches are in the same
Or it
location.
will be because you see, if your Christian brothers will come, instead of them not having a meeting place, you give them half an acre, one lot.
Have a lot,
to
right.
Just so you find out that most times all the churches are in one lot area. So
Yes.
it's easy to destroy, it's easy to touch.
Yep.
So you cannot build churches in the north easily.
Yes.
But in the south, anybody can
You could build your
erect
mosque
a mosque
anywhere.
anywhere. In
We
fact,
sell you land, you want to build whatever,
not
and it.
even. Pass through the major streets of Asata in Enugu and other parts of Nigeria, of Igbo land. They will close the streets during prayer with their mats.
With mats, yes, on the floor.
There's freedom to operate, freedom of religion, any part of the East.
The way it should be, though.
So
Yes.
we come back to
What
the
are we
crisis
gonna do?
of today.
Yes.
What are Nigerians going to do?
Good question.
Yes.
And I know we gotta talk about this more. I know Sibanjo, if you haven't heard, the ball is in your court. We are praying already and fasting.
Yes.
Go in and get the people to be able to defend themselves. But what I want to actually piggyback on, where I was actually going with my WhatsApp stories, is the conversation we had is really important about people not doing what they're supposed to do, hearing the news and sitting as sitting ducks. Change that. But the next conversation is, there's a lot of write-ups flying up and down.
Yes.
And one of the things that strike me in that is people from the Benue area, from the Middle Belt, are writing and saying, oh, we're bearing the brunt of this. This is all happening to us. And where are our Igbo brothers? Why are Igbos keeping quiet? I've seen some response from some irresponsible Igbo people that don't speak for all of us. But I've seen some other nice responses that actually say, hey, these people are grieving, and then go ahead and try to break it down to them. But before I discuss all that, I want to know, what's the answer to the question of somebody who's grieving because something terrible happened to them and looking around and going, where are the Igbos?
Where are our neighbors?
Where are the Igbos? Because they're not calling out anybody else.
Okay.
They're not calling out the Yorubas.
Well,
they're not calling out any
yes.
other.
I too
Yes.
have looked at a broad spectrum of responses.
Yes.
Both from people from the Middle Belt.
Yes.
And people from Ndibo.
Yes.
And to tell you the truth, I understand both sides clearly. Some of us were old enough in 1966. And even if you're not old enough, there is a lot of documentation of the pogroms that happened in northern Nigeria prior to the beginning of the Civil War.
Yep.
Okay?
May 29.
Okay.
July 29, September 29.
If you feel that you don't, if you want to know more, these are things that people need to understand. Go to thedisturbances.com and go and watch that video.
Yes.
I'm not going to, nobody needs to tell you anything. Watch the video yourself.
Yep.
Listen to the reports
And the
of
accounts.
These are not Nigerians.
Third-party
These
accounts.
people have no interest in supporting one side over another.
Yep.
Just go and watch it yourself. And if you are you come from the Middle Belt, you watch what happened in Jos.
Yep.
Watch what happened in Makurdi.
Yep.
And you can come out today and you want to call out Ndibo, then you're not genuine to yourself. So let me put that on the table.
Okay.
Any Igbo that bears resentment has a right to, because you participated in the destruction of Alibo.
Yep.
So let's put that on the table.
Yes.
Let us also point out that for a long time after the Civil War,
Yes.
if you look at the Arewa Consultative Forum, people from the Middle Belt have been in leadership positions. Some of the generals that participated in the war from the Middle Belt have not ever felt shy, pointing out that they were warriors.
Always telling Nigeria how great
how wonderful they were about killing Ndibo.
Yes.
And let me just take a step back and say, when I say Ndibo, I also recognize that our brothers and sisters from
Easterners,
yes, it's not just Ndibo.
Yes.
Cross River State, Akwa Ibom, Rivers, okay, Belsa. A lot of these
brothers.
people we were all Biafra.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's not try to all of a sudden change history.
Right.
The issue, the way I look at it, however, is people go after interests. And I feel very strongly that it is in the interest of Ndibo, as it is for the rest of the non-core Fulani Nigeria,
Yes.
to stop this nonsense once and for all.
Yes.
In that sense, I am in full support of doing whatever it takes to help the people from the Middle Belt. Whatever tribe you are in the Middle Belt, I think we should all form a coalition and remove this nonsense from Nigeria once and for all. And I have said it in a prior program. I am not necessarily saying it is an anti-Fulani issue.
It is
It is
exactly
not
what we
also.
said the last time. Is this is war against terrorism?
Yes, this has to stop.
Yes.
This has to stop. You cannot impose a violent ideology of superiority against a nation of 200 plus million.
200 million. Almost.
So this has to stop. So in that sense, I support very strongly. In fact, I believe in the next show, we are going to be speaking directly at what we feel Ndi Igbo should be doing in the context, because at the end of the day, Straight Talk Radio is the world as we see it from an Igbo perspective.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So, ekuchakwa namba, eweri elata n'ụlọ.
Yes.
You know, so, but I agree with you. But you see, I would like to also state that I don't see any Fulani disavowing themselves from the agenda of controlling Nigeria by terror. I have not seen any of them.
You haven't seen and you haven't heard.
That's right. The President Saduana grew up in Enugu. At least he was in the 2D.
Yep.
And I remember when he was made the Saduana, he took a tour of the United States and was supposed to be the more pragmatic, more open to dialogue. He was willing to
Very
talk
educated.
about Christian-Muslim relationship. He was brought by the U.S. Institute of Peace.
USIP, yes,
And
to
then,
Washington.
you know, there were
Yes.
projects that were being done, the imam and the pastor project, to kind of like kind of encourage interfaith dialogue.
Yes.
And that was what the Catholic Church was envisaging that will help
When
solve
they-
the problem.
Right.
And so that was part of the initial reluctance that they had to come out clearly.
That's the thought.
Because I remember one of their bishops came to the U.S. after Ayo was spoke to the United States Congress specifically about what was going on in Nigeria. One of them came to U.S. behind him and began to say, "I don't feel persecuted." Meanwhile, it was
well,
the
let
first
me
place.
ask him
The
now.
first
Does
place,
he feel persecuted
no,
now?
the first church that was struck by Boko Haram was
Easter.
Christmas Day Catholic Church in Jos area. So, but what am I saying? I have not seen the Saduana or any of the top-ranking leaders among the Fulanis of the Sokoto Caliphate and all that they control, their allies, pay visit to the Benue people.
Visiting, not enough.
Pay visit to the Enugu to say what is going on.
Maybe they should not go because maybe they're bringing the same violence with
Well,
them.
but actually, you make a very good point, Mazi Odaluga,
Yes.
because there is this concept of one north,
Yes.
one north.
Oh yeah.
When there was a riot in Kanu,
Mm-hmm.
even the central bank governor
Yes.
gave money.
No.
He's
you mean
isn't he
not-
now
it
the
wasn't-
emir of Cat?
No,
Emir?
not
not
the
the
first,
emir.
not even the riot. When Boko Haram struck
Yes.
in Kano,
Yes.
he gave Kano 40 million naira.
Yes.
Meanwhile,
Yes.
from the central bank,
Yes.
I have not heard.
And who signed
not-
off on that?
No, I have not heard. This was during the Jonathan
No,
era.
why I'm asking that question? Who signed off on
He
that
himself.
money?
No, because he's a governor of central
He
bank.
was governor of central bank.
But my good sister was the finance minister, and for actually disbursing money that was signed
Approved.
approved,
They
and
are-
that had a
she's
good reason.
pilloried. Yes,
They went all. The
but
way
she's
out.
not Fulani.
Yeah.
Aha.
So-
Just
so-
trying to make a point.
No. Okay. The issue is, no victim fund has ever come in. Nobody has tried to pay any of the Igbos that lost their lives in either the bus stop bombing or during the destruction all over Kano. Nobody has done that until I hear one of them say this is not a Fulani agenda. That you see, all that Buhari
How
has been
could they
saying.
say that when the emir of Kanu is the one saying that this whole thing is a concoction and made up story, that people are attacking themselves and calling it Fulani? He is saying this in broad daylight.
No, but they know the people who are nomadic cattle rearers. Tell me who does it in Nigeria, and who knows that they are the people from outside.
The Council of Herdsmen came out and said, no, these are not herdsmen. We disavow whoever is doing this in the name. What I'm saying is, it doesn't matter what you call them, whether it's Boko Haram or ISIS or Fulani's herdsmen. 3 heads of the same snake. You just gotta kill the snake once.
Yes. So back to the Benue thing.
Yes.
What Ndi Igbo should do?
No, I think we'll leave the Igbo response to the next next segment,
So
because
next-
that is
next hour.
a full discussion in itself.
Okay.
No, I think I want us to really think about this.
Yes.
Why is it that when Boko Haram strikes in Kano,
Yes.
40 million naira is released to the victims, to the Muslim, predominantly Hausa victims? Everybody is paying condolence visits. Look at what is happening. Look at what happened in Jos a few years back. What is happening in Benue today? Nobody has come. Nobody has paid a solidarity. Nobody. Why? Is it not the same One North?
My good sister, who was in the news this week, Chimamanda Adichie,
Okay.
had a talk where she said that there is this one word in Nigeria that seems to express a whole lot of things. She's right. The word is an Igbo word. It is Nkali.
Yes. Nkali. Yes.
Another Igbo man sang and said, "Na na-enwe obodo enwe." Well, Jizzy
Nkali is actually, that's quite interesting, because that is what has been demonstrated to a lot of Nigerians, that I can learn.
Oh, yes.
And part of that is not based on their own innate strength, but because they have big brothers. And I hope we come into that conversation.
Whether it's big brother, small brother, or
No,
whatever
no,
they
no,
have,
no, no,
Nkali,
no, no.
Nkali,
No,
and
no,
it's
no,
not a
You
good
know,
thing.
the thing about the wonderful thing about that word
Yes.
is that it really doesn't have an English equivalent.
That's
No,
right.
No,
Because there's no other way you can express in one word
Yes.
that sense of entitlement, because that's really what it is. It is exactly what people here in America think about white America when you talk about the racial makeup of the United States.
Yes.
That sense that
Yes, you can't do nothing about it.
Yeah. And that's where we are. That's why the president cannot address it as a national crisis. That's why he cannot, you don't see him creating, it used to be in the past.
Oh, no.
They would put together a commission, and no commission of inquiry.
That would be Obasanjo. He's not from the north.
No, under the military rule,
Yes.
they were very good at, we need to set up inquiry of
Commission of Inquiry. Yes.
Death by committee.
And so, at the end of it all, you will not see the papers or the reports, and either the commander or who was supposed to respond that didn't respond will be promoted or moved out to a new, and this is there's always been this entanglement with the security system, because if you listen to the testimonies published by Human Rights Watch and some of what was going on in just then, people will talk about army trucks pulling up with people in uniform, and they're coming out of hiding thinking that their salvation has come. All of a sudden, those people will open fire on
Spray
them
you with bullets.
And then disappear.
and will disappear. If you watch the disturbances, the account that happened of September 29, 1966,
Yes.
the missionaries were actually avoiding security agents because they
were searching their cars and getting people out.
They were culpable. They were involved.
And that is the paradox.
Yes.
The Nigerian police actually was more of a national
Yes.
organization than the army.
Yes. At least people who ran to the police station
In most
felt
instances,
safe.
in most instances,
In some places, yes.
in most instances, at least you were safe.
Yes.
There were cases where they were massacred, some
Even
with the
in
complicity of the police.
Yep.
But in general, the police station became a refuge.
Yes.
The army from day one was not. The army was clearly on the side of the well, on the side of the government.
Yes.
Because, I mean,
Well,
it was the government orchestrated massacre of Easterners.
Yes.
There is so much to say, but I think our listeners and our viewers on Facebook Live will have to catch us on the other side after we take a break. But I want to remind you that you're listening to Straight Talk Radio on WGHC 98.3 FM. Your voice, your music, your station. This radio station is a public service radio station. It's also public supported. We depend on the goodwill of listeners like you. And we will love you if you like this radio station, and if you like what you hear, and if you want to hear this conversation and other conversations, the one program before us, the one that comes after us, the one that comes on Sunday for those of you who like to worship, and for those of you who love African music and all kinds of music, we ask you to go to our website at wghcfm.org and make a donation. Any amount is really, really we will really appreciate any amount you could donate, and we thank you as you donate, and your donation is tax deductible, of course. But we encourage you, please go to the website and make a pledge, but also if you could right now, make a donation. You could also send us email at wghcfm.org. Our email address is there on the contact us. But if you want to send an email to this program, Straight Talk Radio, send it to Straight Talk Radio at igboheritage.org. Straight Talk Radio at igboheritage.org. We really, really appreciate your conversations with us, your feedback. I'd like to give a shout out to Chizoro Ehiezo KK, who's been giving us comments on Facebook. And we thank you. We see what you're typing, and we will respond to it on the other half where we continue this conversation. Thanks for listening to us today, and don't go anywhere, because we'll be right back after a short break. And with me in the studio are still
Mazi Ejike Obase,
Mazi KK Odeluga,
and Mazi Oke Okachu, saying don't go too far.
You're listening to WGHC 98.3 FM.
While you're but we are nothing friend from the the first time. Want to trust in skin. Why you get anything you like? Long as you are right, then me alright. Me know your man, that's why I'm alive.
Your voice, your music.
Whether me in a skirt or jeans or short shorts, head race when me walk past. Me feel the eyes, believe the eye, me love the lights, me dream the spy.
Baby, Anna, they say you like you all I get you all baby, Anna. Anywhere that you go, I can follow you to go, baby. You level.
You're listening to WGHC 98.3 FM.
New level. I them turn Tony in a rebel.
Your voice, your music, your station. WGHC 98.3 FM.
WGHC 98.3 FM. Your voice, your music, your station. Follow us at facebook.com/WGHC 98.3 FM to watch all of our live streams. iPhone users.